Bienvenidos, hola, welcome to the Mujeres Power Talk Women in Business series. I'm Lisa Zazier, Executive Director of the Educational Programs for the Virginia Hispanic Foundation.
And I'm Sandra Felipe. I'm the Office Coordinator for the Virginia Hispanic Chamber and Foundation.
And so we are so excited to have with us nationally recognized Sylvia Acevedo, one of America's top 50 women in tech, as stated in Forbes Magazine, and CEO of the Girl Scouts for the USA. And this is one amazing woman. I'm so excited to chat with Sylvia today. And Sylvia began her career as a rocket scientist, systems engineer in NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, working on the Voyager 2 team. And this role led to the executive level positions with tech companies, including Dell, Apple, IBM, and Autodesk. Then later, Sylvia was appointed as the White House Commissioner in the Obama administration. So as CEO of the Girl Scouts of the USA, Sylvia led the transformation of the organization, introducing 146 new STEM, outdoors entrepreneurship, civics badges, and programs which develop skills needed to succeed in our world. And being on the cutting edge of technology, Sylvia, oh my gosh, was appointed to the board of the directors of Qualcomm Inc. as a member of the governance committee. And she inspires others to not just be users of technology, but to become designers, creators, innovators, and leaders. And that leadership, inspiration, and success has been recognized throughout her entire career through local, national, international recognition and awards. And to inspire youth, Sylvia wrote Path to the Stars, My Journey from Girl Scout to Rocket Scientist, to share her story of how she overcame many challenges to become one of the first Hispanics, male or female, to graduate with a master's degree in engineering from Stanford University. And we are so excited to hear her words of inspiration today, to keep us all moving forward on our journeys in successful paths of our lives. So Sandra, you want to start out?
Thank you, Lisa. And Sylvia, like Lisa said, thank you for being here with us today. We're really excited to hear your opinion, your thoughts, and what drives you to all the things that you do in leadership and in your career, personal and professional career. Well, we want to start by going back at the early stage of your life, and we want to ask you first, as a child, what drew you to science and technology? Where did that passion begin?
You know, I was really fortunate when I was a young girl, to have joined the Girl Scouts. And one of the first times I went on a camping adventure, I was introduced to s'mores, these wonderful marshmallow graham cracker chocolate. And after I ate it, it was at night, and it was in New Mexico, and you could see the stars. And I was just looking up at the sky. And my troop leader sat next to me, and she pointed out that they weren't just twinkly lights, but they were actually stars, planets, constellations. And I had no idea about that. Well, she remembered that. And later on, when I was earning badges, I wanted to earn a cooking badge like all my friends. And she said, why don't you also earn a science badge? And she said, remember, you really like looking at the stars, so why don't you do something around space? And I was so grateful for that, because I decided to make an Estes rocket. And it took me 6 times before I was successful. But that was really important, because it taught me to keep trying. And because I was in an all-girl environment, after I failed the first time, the second time, the third time, no one said, oh, Sylvia, you're a girl, you can't do it. It was about, how do you figure out to do it? So by the 6th time, that rocket finally went up into that beautiful blue New Mexico sky. And I thought to myself, I can do it. I can do science. I can do math. And so at that point, I began really applying myself in science and math. And if my math teacher just assigned the even problems, I did the even and the odd problems. I kept asking her for extra assignments. And like any kid, when you get good at something, you like doing it some more. And so because I was good at math, I liked doing more of it. And then I would do more math. And so I got so good, I became a rocket scientist.
That's amazing. I think, sorry, Lisa, just to chime in real quick. I think you point a very good keywords, and it's keep on trying, and not just 1, 2 times. 3 times. You often hear that, okay, to the third one, we're gonna make it at the third one. But you try more than that, and until you made it. So that's a very important thing to point out, that it doesn't take 1, 2, or 3 times. It can take longer, but as long as you keep on practicing, it's achievable.
Mhm.
Yes, I was going to say I was a Girl Scout as well, and it was a wonderful experience. And I think you had probably a top-notch troop leader who noticed these things, because sometimes it takes that other person to just notice and help you launch in a different, new, exciting way. So another question we had was, a lot of people say that people are born leaders. Did you always believe you had the qualities to be a fantastic leader, or is this like a quality that you feel you've gained over the years and you developed?
Oh my goodness, this is something that has really been developed, because I didn't grow up thinking I would necessarily be a leader. And there were hardly any female role models, and more in history or in books than in real life. And so for me, I didn't necessarily think of myself as a leader, but I very much aspired myself as to be a leader. And it's something that I've worked on, and I continue working on it. How can I be the best leader that I can be, especially inspiring the rising generation? So it really is something that you can work on to get better and to be good at. There are really key skills that are very important to be a good leader, and you can work on them and become a great leader.
That's very nice to say, because again, we think that sometimes we say, oh no, I'm not a natural leader, I'm not gonna go that path. But it's nice to know that you can practice and you can learn to be better. And with that, we have another question, and that is, as an individual with such an incredible career in so many fields, did you always have that dream of becoming or being in science and technology, or did you have another career dream that you wanted to pursue?
So, when I was a young kid, there weren't role models for me that were like that. And I actually, in some ways, it was a bit of a gift, because I discovered I liked science and math and I liked rockets, but all I saw were men in those roles. And so in my young head, I decided I wanted to be that. And to do that, I told myself, to be an engineer doesn't mean you're going to be a male engineer. You're going to be an engineer, or you're going to be in business, and it's not a male business. So what I did as a young kid is I said, what do they do? And how can I learn to do those things? Because, I knew if I just thought of him as a male engineer, I would never think I could be that. So I decided an engineer does these things. And so I learned how to do those things. Obviously a lot of math and science and a lot of other things that you learn about. But that was really important, because then I never let myself be less than. And in my head, I was always belonging. And at the time, again, when I was growing up, IBM was this really big company. And I also had a dream that maybe like I could work at IBM. And again, all you saw were men in those positions. And so I would tell myself, what skills do I need to be in those roles? And then I went about to get those skills. Again, not letting myself be limited, because then if I said, oh, it's a male's job or whatever, I would never be able to do it. But if I said, this job requires these skills, and then I got those skills, then in my mind, I said, I can get that job. And that's actually what happened.
That's amazing. So who are your role models growing up? Was it people in your family, or was it like with the influences and the passions that you had? Was there anybody that stood out for you?
Well, I was really fortunate that my mother helped me learn to read at an early age. And then I got into Head Start, and I had a great teacher who saw that I wasn't good at crafts. So in show and tell, I didn't have to do an art project or a craft project. She actually asked me to talk about the books I was reading, which is like, very simple, basic books about Spot, Jane, Sally, the famous Dick and Jane books. But you know what? That really fostered my love of reading. And so my role models came from the women I discovered in books. And there were two, Clara Barton and Florence Nightingale. And people think they knew I really loved those two. They thought I wanted to be a nurse. But it turns out that I think what drew me to them as leaders was that they, what really drew me to Clara Barton and Florence Nightingale was that they were problem solvers. They made a difference, they made an impact, they kind of changed the world. Clara Barton created the first aid kit. Clara Barton really helped in the Civil War and, started the American Red Cross. And then Florence Nightingale, she changed the medical system to this day. The triage system that we use was developed because of Florence Nightingale. And what I loved about her was that during the war, she saw all these people dying in the Boer War. And she thought, how could we, reduce the casualties? And she figured out a system that would dramatically reduce the number of people dying. And she couldn't convince anybody because she was just a nurse. So then her girls who really couldn't learn math back then, but her father taught her math. And so she figured out statistically, she could prove that her methods would reduce battlefield casualties. And even then they didn't believe her. So she did something great. She hired a map maker to figure out, how do you depict numbers into pictures? And so she hired a cartographer, somebody who makes maps, and they figured out how to depict the numbers into a chart, because that's what map makers made, was charts, which is why now when you use spreadsheets, they're called charts. Well, she created one of the first charts in the world. With that, the picture, this picture told the story, and they changed the ways of triage, which we use to this day. As a result, Florence Nightingale became the first woman to be inducted into the Statistical Royal Society in England. And she really did change modern medicine, not just modern nursing, but modern medicine. So as you can tell, as a kid, those women really inspired me.
Really inspired and very determined to convince, to influence, to get their message across no matter what. And like you said, like the role models figure out different ways to get there. And let's say that as a powerful woman and as a leader in many industries, what do you see as the most significant barrier for women in businesses and especially in leadership positions?
So one of the most important things that you have to be able to decide is you have to make the decision and convince yourself that you belong there. I was a trailblazer, but one of the key reasons of my success, yes, it was the persistence. Yes, it was the resilience. It was the, never give up and invest in myself. But I also believed in myself. I believed I belonged there. And I think that's a very important trait for women, is to really believe you belong there. And then also to develop the right skills and assets that will get you to where you want to go. So don't just say, well, that's a male skill or whatever. Decide what you want to do so that you will get those skills. So a lot of women who are in corporate world, it's very important if you want to be one of the top bosses to have what they call P&L, profit and loss, like you're managing the money part of the business. A lot of women prefer to be in a support role, not in one of those P&L roles. Well, that will automatically kind of stop you from being able to get to that top role. So figuring out, how do you get into those sales and marketing jobs? And then how do you begin to manage people who are bringing in the money for the company and selling for the company? And then that gives you really valuable experience that allows you to get to the top. So I think a lot of women don't do that. And then a lot of times we're not investing in ourselves, making time for ourselves. That's so important, because you've got to make time to really sharpen your skill set. I mean, I still take classes to improve, and I did that throughout my career, and that was always really beneficial. A lot of times, sometimes, especially in the early days, companies weren't investing in me. And so I was investing in myself. And that really helped out. And so now I continue to do that.
I think that goes back to how you were saying you have to know you're enough, and to go ahead and just see yourself in the position or visualize it, and then you see yourself there doing it. And so with like you being in like the leadership positions you have been in, did you ever feel maybe you were treated differently because you were a woman?
Yeah, gosh, all the time. That's absolutely the case, especially, when I was initially starting to be a manager and being a leader, I did not fit the mold of any of those. So, right away, learning how to make sure that people realize you're in charge and learning how to communicate, and having that sense of authority doesn't mean that you're overbearing by any means, but how do you inspire people? How do you get people to come together and work together and make those, get the organization teamwork? That's so important. So yeah, I ran into those challenges quite a few times of when people, how do you make them take you seriously? And so communication matters quite a bit. How you hold yourself, how you present yourself in a meeting or in a presentation, all those things really matter.
And with everything that you do, how have you created this balance, or is there such a perfect balance in your career and your personal life? Do you believe that there is perfect balance at all?
So early on, somebody told me you're like, life is about juggling balls, and there are some balls that are made of glass, and some balls that are not made of glass or rubber, and they bounce. So decide what is your glass ball and manage that, but realize you are always making trade-offs, and just be conscious about the trade-offs, because sometimes you might want to say, you know what, I need to do a timeout, I need to do something different, but be very conscious of what's the most important things in your life, the glass balls, and those are the ones you are very focused on not dropping, but realize sometimes you can't be doing everything and pleasing everyone.
I think that's such good advice for for all of us, because there is that trade-off, and like you said, picking that glass ball that you're not going to drop that one. And I think like with our family and everything, I had to pick my family, my relationships was my glass ball, and I always had to keep that like intact no matter what. And while I tried to juggle all the things that were important to me as well, and as Lisa in developing myself, but like that was always my very one I held so precious. So I think that's like a very, very good advice. So Sylvia, throughout like your whole business career, what would you consider your biggest risk? Because like I said, when I read all of your accomplishments, I said you had 9 lives. I mean, all these wonderful different careers you've had. What do you think was your biggest risk?
But that's a great question. So there have been times when I've made changes in my career, and they didn't happen immediately. Like when I wanted to do international or global, I was rejected for months. And, but I kept hearing no, and I had to figure out how to turn it into a yes. And I really couldn't believe that, I was doing really great at this company, and the fact that I was also bilingual and they were growing internationally. I just couldn't believe there wasn't a spot for me, but they kept telling me no. So finally, numbers are my superpower. And so I created an analysis that showed that if that particular region, which was included Latin America, but was called, the Pacific region, that if they had the same kind of sales rate that I had in my accounts of these multinational companies that we had multinational deals with, but they hadn't taken advantage of, that the sales revenue would grow by hundreds of millions of dollars throughout the region. So I created this presentation, and this is after 6 months of being told no. I found I figured out where the vice president of that region was, and I found my moment, and I said, I can grow your region by over $700 million. And he looked at me and I said, I've got the presentation. And he said, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. Went into a team room and we went through the presentation and he's like, wow, I had just we'd never even thought about calling on these accounts and didn't know that they had multinational arrangements, et cetera. And so he went to grab the presentation and he said, can't I have it? And I put my hand on it and I said, it comes with me. And, you know, that was really risky, but I got the job, right? And I think another time was when I had been an entrepreneur. I had worked at Dell and me and 3 people had left and started a company and we sold the company and I could have gone back into technology, but I really wanted to make a difference in what was happening with education and healthcare, especially with the fast growing Latino population where I was living in Texas at the time. And that was a huge risk, right? And, you know, I wasn't an educator, or I wasn't a physician or anything like that. But I knew that they needed somebody who could really think analytically and could create systems that could scale to meet the needs of the population. And that ended up working out really well for me. And I ended up getting to the White House and I got the Otley Award from the President of Mexico, which is the highest civil rights award that Mexican government gives to a non-Mexican citizen. So, you know, that was a big risk, but, you know, it worked out as well.
Yeah, I think that's the persistence, and then find your moment. I love that. That really is something that resonates, I think, with a lot of people. And you were ready, you were prepared. That's like, I think, another very important thing. You did all your homework and you were prepared and you found that moment. And that is risky. And to say it comes with me, I think that's like, wow. And to have that empowerment within yourself, to confidence to do that's incredible.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. That's what I was gonna say. I mean, just saying this presentation comes with me, it's, yes, I know what I'm talking about and I'm ready. So that's very confident for you to say that. That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, I always made sure that whatever position I wanted, remember I disengaged you had to be male or whatever for that. And I just said, what were the skill sets needed for that position? And I focused on getting those skill sets and being able to demonstrate those skill sets. So it kind of took away, you know, it's like, you're not the package I thought, but you can do those things and you're demonstrating that you can do those things. So I got the job. So when you're a trailblazer, as I've been in my career, you sometimes have to do things that are a little bit different to break open the doors of opportunity.
And I think that ties to the skills assets that you mentioned a lot. With that say, what skills or what abilities do you find the most useful in a leadership position or a role?
So especially today with the internet and social media, communication is key. So being able to articulate and to communicate is very important. You know, what are you going to, what are your goals, what are you focused on, and being able to communicate that in a way that people realize it matters to them and to motivate them. So communication, working on communication skills is really very key. And doing it in a way that is very memorable and motivating to people. So, you know, when I became CEO of the Girl Scouts, I started off right away and I said, it's all about the 3 M's. It's about the Girl Scout movement, it's about money, and it's about the membership. And so all of what we were going to focus on was going to fit under one of those 3 M's. It was either going to be, what is it doing for the membership? What's it doing for the girls? What's it doing for the movement, meaning the programs, the volunteers, and money? How do we make sure that we have enough funding to support the organization? And that's, you know, everyone knew, oh, Sylvia's got 3 M's, right? And so that was very clear. It was, you know, it aligned everything that we were doing. Suddenly it wasn't like all over the place. It was like, how does it fit into one of these 3 buckets? And, you know, as a result, by the time I left, I said there was a 4th M, which was momentum, because we really were moving along quite well.
That's really good. So I think anyone in a leadership position, those are very, very valuable tips, I think, for someone leading a team and leading the way. So through our Pasaporte a la Educación bilingual leadership programs that we have for the Hispanic students in elementary, middle, and high school, we share that same passion in helping students, I think, find what inspires them and then to believe in their dreams, regardless of their circumstances, like you have said, that they can accomplish great things. And so with the leadership lessons, they go through a series of 10 leadership lessons, and it starts out with what are my dreams, and then it's achieving success, and success looks different for everybody, and then affirmations, things that will empower them within themselves, because a lot of times their families can't do it for them. They have to take that on and do that within themselves. So we really value, I think, your leadership and what you've done, because it aligns exactly with where our focus is and where we're going. So what advice would you give that next generation of female leaders? And tell us about also your wonderful book, the Path to the Stars, on how you overcame many challenges. Oh my gosh, and become one of the first Hispanics, male or female, to graduate with a master's degree in engineering from Stanford. And this is like the most wonderful book. I'm enjoying reading it. I'm not done yet, and I'm excited. I can't put it down. It just came yesterday. So I've been really excited about that.
Well, thank you very much. So first, advice to leaders. One is, first believe in yourself. That's very key. And then get the skills that you need for that next position. So that will give you confidence. Because if you're trying to go for a position and there's some skills that you don't have yet, then you really do need to develop those because that makes it really hard to portray the confidence you need in that role. So when you're going to be like a CEO of a big organization, you have to know about finance. It doesn't mean you have to be a financial expert, but you've got to at least know a bit about finance. You have to know about whatever the product or services is. Again, it doesn't mean you become an expert in that, but you get comfortable enough that you can talk about that. So it comes across as being very authentic and being very genuine. So when you're in a company, figure out what it is the company's doing, and as a leader, describe what you do in a way that provides value to the company. So let's just say you're in finance. Well, you could say, well, I'm an accountant. Okay. But if you meet the CEO, that doesn't distinguish you in any way. But if you say, I make sure that our financial statements are accurate so that we pass every audit. Wow. He or she looks at you and says, okay, that's somebody really good, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you're in another area, how do you describe what you do in a way that provides value? Say you're in quality control. You could say, I just make sure I inspect all the products before they go out the door. Or you could say, I make sure our customers are delighted because the product they receive is even better than what they imagined when they ordered it. Now they're going, wow, this person really is something else. So really figure out what is it that your job is and how does it provide value? And as you continue to go up the organization, really think about that. How is it what I am doing is providing value to the organization, and communicate that. That I think is a really important leadership skill for women, because a lot of times we just describe our work in terms of supportive roles and not as a leadership role. And it's very important that you describe that in terms of leadership. And then also the first person you have to convince is yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to have that confidence. So now about my book, Path to the Stars. It's also in Spanish, Camino a las Estrellas. And the reason I wrote it is I would give talks to students. And I remember I was out at the school, and I gave this talk. And then as I was leaving, I saw this really long line. And so I was kidding the organizer. I said, oh, that's the lunch line. And she goes, no, that's the line of kids that want to talk to you. And I looked at that line. I said, oh, I'm glad I don't have another appointment right now. There's a lot of kids to talk to. And what I realized is that so many of them, they didn't have anyone like me. They didn't know about anyone like me. There aren't any very, very, very few books about women in STEM, Latinas in STEM, or anything like that, or Latinas business executives, Latinas in the White House, Latinas leading, a major corporation, right? Being the CEO of a major corporation like the Girl Scouts. They just didn't know that, right? So I realized I needed to write a book. And that's why I wrote the book. And the reason I wrote it for middle school was that with the world changing around us, with digital age upon us, you have to know a little bit about math and science. And that was such a distinguishing factor in my career. And if you don't know math or science, your career trajectory is really going to be limited. But for me, I thought I'm going to write this book and hopefully inspire kids before that window of opportunity closes and they stop taking the very important math and science electives. So it's kind of like when those elevator doors are closing, and I had my mental image of the book was like stopping right in the doors, kind of like the last chance. And so, and then the other thing is, I grew up, all my grandparents were from Mexico. My mom was born in Mexico. My dad was born in El Paso, Texas. And so I grew up in a Spanish-speaking household. Bilingual education is just so important. And I wanted to make sure my book came out in both English and Spanish. And the publisher said, Sylvia, that's not how it works. It's going to be in English, and if it sells, then we'll translate it to Spanish. I said, no, it's coming out in English and Spanish. And they said, no, we're not. I said, so what's the problem? They said, well, it costs money to translate. I said, take it out of my advance. And the book came out in English and Spanish at the same time. So I'm really happy with that. It's written at a middle school level, so it's very accessible. So adults who are learning Spanish or practicing their Spanish, they love the book in Spanish because it's very easy to read. But I really wrote it to inspire kids. And, right now, when you think about me, you think, oh my gosh, you're an author, you're a corporate board director, you were a CEO, you worked in the White House, you're an engineer, all of these things. But you can also tell the story is I grew up on a dirt road. My family ran out of money. We had to go live with other family members. Imagine, growing up 5 adults, 6 kids in a small house with 1 bathroom, right? But that was my life for a period of time until we were finally able to, get a rent house. And so, I think sometimes people think, oh, Sylvia, you had it easy. No, my family had tragedies, we had traumas, we had really a lot of challenges. And I wanted to give kids hope that you can overcome them and that you can live a life of your dreams. And that really is my book.
I definitely, I'm getting that, feel that when just these first few chapters that I've read, and I can put myself right there. And my husband and you have a lot in common. They have the 6 kids in their family, and they shared the bathroom. And he also got the Oatley Award as well. And it's such an honor. I mean, to be acknowledged that way. And I think it's just incredible. And I know Sandra, she has just blossomed and she in her careers, and she keeps continuing educating herself and going for it. She keeps always taking classes, and I think that's what the inspiration is constantly keep working on yourself, and no matter where you are, and just keep going. And I know that like you, with this next generation of business women leaders that are coming, listening to you, I think will give them that extra boost that they need to keep going. And we're just so excited that you were here today with us and being able to share your wisdom.
Well, thank you. I say to all of those of you who are listening that, like I said, the first person you have to convince is yourself, and you can live a life of your dreams. You do have to work at it, and what you will find is it does get easier. And failure is part of the journey. And I like to say failure is first attempt in learning, FAIL, first attempt in learning. So, if you are successful right away, that's great. But if you continue to live your life of your potential, you're going to have a lot of learning experiences. And how do you turn those learning experiences into, great experiences for you so that develops you to be the great potential that you have inside of you. And I am really fortunate that I've been able to live that life and of overcoming a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles, being a trailblazer. And I want to open up and make sure that it's not just a path to success. There's a huge highway of opportunity behind me for all of you.
I think that's excellent. I know with the students that we're working with in the schools, I know a lot of them have said some of the girls were saying how math was very hard, and they're trying to learn their English. Some of them don't speak English, or maybe don't read or write in Spanish as well, and it's making it hard to learn their English. So any advice to give these girls that are in the schools right now that we're working with?
Sure. Well, math is a universal language. So, 1 is 1, 2 is 2 all over the world. So that is really fantastic. But in terms of language skills, you find something that you are interested in and start there. So, when you are trying to learn something that is interesting to you, you will then want to do it more and more and get better skills at it. So really do find that and then decide, I want to learn about, maybe you like plants, maybe you like nature, maybe you like, animals, or maybe you like science or space. Really focus on that and start learning how to read and write about that topic, because you're interested in it. And because you're interested in that topic, you're then going to have confidence. And then when you have that confidence, you'll be able to build to competence to be even better at it. So, it does take time to develop. When you think about engineers, you don't always think about good people who are able to speak really well or communicate well. And I'll tell you, I was one of those. In one of my first speaking opportunities, it was so bad. There were 2 people on stage, me and this other woman. No one asked me any questions, and my presentation was so flat. And on the other hand, her presentation was like amazing. And I remember telling myself, okay, Sylvia, this is something you're going to have to work at. I took a lot of lessons. I practiced. I really worked on my ability to speak and to communicate. So it's not something that came to me naturally. It was something that I really worked on. And anything you want to do, you can do it. It just might take you some time, but that's okay. You'll get good at it, and it'll serve you your entire life.
You seem a natural, right, Sandra?
Yeah.
She's a
Yeah.
natural.
You seem so natural too. I relate to that in terms of practicing and practicing and practicing, especially like when I'm taking classes. I have to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, because if I do it improvising, it just looks really bad. So you're right. Practice makes it better. And thank you for bringing up that math and numbers are really important. I think that I include myself. Sometimes we say I'm not really good at that. I don't like math for XY reason. But when we really put the time and we dedicate some of our time to really understand math, it becomes easier, and you can do many things with math, with algebra specifically, and apply them to your daily life.
Absolutely. It will open up so many opportunities. Now, if I had the same kind of math skills I did when I was younger, I could work at Google, I could work at Apple, I could work at any of those companies, because that kind of thinking and that kind of math skills would open up all those doors of opportunities. So it's important to have those kind of skills.
Well, thank you so much, Sylvia. This has been wonderful, and we appreciate you giving your time and all these great inspiring things for all of us to think about and to continue to improve within ourselves to be the best version of ourselves.
That's wonderful. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Again, believe in yourself, and the first person you have to convince is yourself. And once you do that, no one can stop you.
Thank you, Sylvia. It was great having you today.
Thank you.